Good evening, everyone. Today, we're going to cover RL2 progression. If you haven't watched my last video on RL3 progression, please go watch it before watching this video because this video is just going to cover RL2 of progression. So RL2, you'll be focused on mission tasks for your unit. In RL3, you were focused on just base tasks, things that could be knocked out at an airfield or a stage field that every pilot in every single unit is required to be able to do. RL2 will go over just mission-focused stuff. One of the benefits of being RL2 is you can now go on maintenance test flights, and you can also be the run-up pilot for the day, also known as a RUB. If you don't know what RUB stands for, go ask your neighborhood friendly maintenance test pilot and he'll tell you what that stands for. But anyways, if you've been selected to be the run-up pilot for that day, you will be the pilot that goes out and starts up the APU for any mechanics or avionics people that need to troubleshoot or work on something in the aircraft. If you are going to go on a maintenance test flight with a maintenance test pilot, then the maintenance test pilots have a series of tests that they need to run in flight on aircraft that have recently been maintenance overhauled or had some type of repair made on them, and you are going to go out on this flight where the maintenance test pilot is going to run these tests. So it's just another way for you to accumulate hours as a brand new pilot. Those are some of the things you can do as an RL2 pilot. So the task you're going to be required to do, they're going to be evaluated day and night, just like they are in RL3. Common sense, right? The first thing you're going to be evaluated on is combat maneuver flight, also known as CMF. So there are 4 maneuvers you're going to be taught, at least if you're a 60 pilot, for CMF, and that is the dive recovery, brake turns, decelerative turns, and cyclic climb to push over brake. And if you don't know what those are, they're outlined in the ATM. Go search for combat maneuver flight and read all about those 4 maneuvers. It will break down and talk about the standards each one of those are evaluated on, and it actually gives a pretty good synopsis on how to do those maneuvers. CMF is honestly one of the coolest days of progression I had. It really allows you to fly the freaking brakes off the aircraft. It's a lot of fun. You're real low doing these fast, quick turns. You're pulling a lot of power. You're pulling a lot of G's. You're hauling ass. It's a lot of fun. So next, after you've completed CMF, you're going to move into AMS, also known as Aviation Mission Survivability. These maneuvers are classified. You don't even get to learn these in flight school, but when you get to the unit, they're going to be taught by the AMSO in a class. So you have AMS academics, and then you'll go to the sim with the AMSO. He'll evaluate you in the simulator as you're flying these maneuvers that he taught you, and then you will go with your IP and they will be evaluated in flight. Again, they're classified, so obviously I'm not going to talk about those on here. They're classified for obvious reasons because it is our evasive maneuvers to avoid being shot down. The class is very thorough, very enjoyable. You'll learn a lot. The next thing I was evaluated on, you may or may not be evaluated on, is hoist. So obviously hoist is a medevac task for a medevac unit. So the first portion of hoist, you'll have hoist academics. So it's about an hour to 2 hour long class, depending on who's teaching it. And at the end of the class, big surprise, you'll have an exam. In aviation, obviously, as you guys know, we love our exams. You must score an 80 on the exam. to proceed with the flight training. Once you get to the aircraft for your initial qualification, you'll do a 25-foot, a 50-foot, and a 100-foot dummy load. Once those are complete, you will then do a 25-foot, a 50-foot, and a 100-foot live hoist load with a real medic actually on the end of the hoist. Now, my unit does static hoist, not dynamic, but we train all 4 phases of the full hoist mission for every single one of the 25, 50, and 100 foot. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing hoist because I love medevac. The next and final thing you'll be evaluated on, if you're going to a medevac, of course, is multi-ship. And multi-ship is multi-ship. Obviously, it's 2 or more aircraft flying in formation, and you're flying as close as you can, depending on MET-TC, and you'll be evaluated on day and night. In flight school, I don't think you ever do multi-ship night. At least I didn't whenever I went through. So my unit was the first time I actually got to do multi-ship night. It's a lot of fun. Multi-ship's pretty challenging. It's pretty fun, especially when you're in trail. And yeah, good time. So those are the 4 things for my RL2 progression. Obviously, if you go to an assault company, that task list may be a little different. Sure, you got to do progression on sling loads, probably gunnery, and obviously 47s and Apaches are going to be completely different. But if you're going to a medevac for a 60 unit, that's what you're going to be evaluated on for RL2. So the holdups in RL2, I've seen 2 of them. The first one is going to be AMS, and it's really not so much the fault of the student. It just kind of comes down to circumstance. So these AMS academic classes are scheduled by the AMSO, and you have to attend, and you have to do the simulator before you actually go into the aircraft. So guys that I've seen get held up over AMS, it's typically been because they haven't done the AMS academic portion to be able to do it in the aircraft, and they have to wait on that class in order to move forward. Fortunately, that didn't get me. I found out when the class was, as fast as I could, I knocked it out, did the sim, and I was ready to fly when I was RL2. The other thing that I've seen hang people up, and this one actually kind of hung me up for a little while, was multi-ship. And the reason why multi-ship hangs a lot of people up in RL2 is because it takes a lot of coordination with another crew. Obviously, it takes 2 crews to do multi-ship. So, and one member of that crew has to also be an AMC. So the best thing to do if you're a PI in progression and you need to knock out multi-ship is when you find out you're on the flight schedule, you let your IP know, hey, I need to knock out multi-ship. Is there anybody we can do multi-ship with? If he is game for doing the multi-ship, obviously take initiative, find out who else is on the flight schedule that day, and try to see if they're willing to do multi-ship with you. Because it takes a lot of coordination and a lot of planning, you should coordinate with them sooner rather than later. That way you have all your ducks in a row on your day you're going to fly. So those are typically the hang-ups I see for RL2. Now we're going to get into a little bit of story time here. So whenever I was RL2, my platoon was going down to Fort Bliss to do medevac coverage. Since I wasn't fully progressed at that time, I wasn't going to be able to stay with them to do medevac coverage because I had to focus on progression, and I was really of no use to them without being fully progressed. So one cool thing about that, though, was I got to do the cross country with them as a pilot because I was RL2. Also, my PC was actually my platoon IP. So We did an IFR cross country, and I got 12 hours there and back for that cross country. And honestly, that really developed me as a junior pilot, because 12 hours in just 1 week is a lot of flying. Now, it may have not have been a lot of flying when you're comparing the hour accumulation to maybe somebody who has been deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq or, in Vietnam. But nowadays, 12 hours in 1 week, that's a good bit of flying. So, and even though it was IFR, me being as fresh of a pilot as I am, that was still really good training for me. It got me more familiarized with radios, got me more familiarized with startups, more familiarized with shutdowns, more familiarized with operating within airports that I'm not used to. So it got me to where when we were about to come in for approach, I already had the airport layout pulled up, and I was already figuring out and orienting myself on where I needed to go based on the tower's instructions. So I tell you guys that to have something to look forward to as an RL2 pilot. Get more flight time, right? The next thing I want to talk to you guys about is my story number 2. So my multi-ship, my first multi-ship. So I actually had to do 2 multi-ships during my RL2 progression because my first one, the nighttime portion, got canceled due to weather. So I didn't really have to do 2 multi-ships. My nighttime portion just got deferred to a later date due to weather. So on this particular day, on my first attempt, we went in, got a weather brief. The ceilings were around 2,000, 2,500, so not ideal, but still legal to fly, right? We did the crew brief, went out to the aircraft, did a run-up. We're sitting on the runway, about to take off. I'm in trail, so those of you who do not know, lead aircraft's in front, trail's in the back. I started off in the back, in my opinion, and probably everyone's opinion. The trail aircraft is the hardest aircraft because everything is based off that lead aircraft. You know what I mean? You are laser focused on that aircraft in front of you and trying to maintain separation, but not too much separation. You are trying to be in the formation that we were flying in that day. We were trying to be 1 to 3 discs next to one another. And when I say 1 to 3 discs, I mean 1 to 3 rotor disc. So we take off. As we start to climb through 1,500, I'm looking up at the ceiling and I'm like, that ceiling's kind of getting close to us. I don't know if we're going to be able to maintain 500 feet of separation from that ceiling. As we get up to about 1,800 feet, and I see the lead aircraft start to stir up that ceiling, that cloud. It actually kind of wisped into the rotor disc. And I look over at my IP, I'm like, oh yeah, we're not getting up to 2,300. And he kind of, laughed and was like, yeah, I know. So lead aircraft, which is the aircraft that does all the communication, he calls back to the tower and asks for an altitude reduction and says, hey, we think the ceilings are lower than reported. Can we stay at 1,800 feet? The controlling agency granted us the altitude reduction, so we kept pressing on. We're legal, right? We've been granted by the controlling agency an altitude reduction. But this was really the first time, really kind of in my aviation career, that I'd been really nervous. When you're in flight school, you do these safety briefs at the beginning of class all of the time, and that's just something that you're required to do in flight school. Is somebody in the class is assigned every single day to bring a safety investigation report to class and brief it to the class. Everyone takes turns doing this. And just the circumstances around this particular flight was, was kind of less than ideal. Weather was kind of crappy. We were still trying to get the training done due to just kind of pressure to get through progression, right? We weren't doing anything illegal or anything. We were just trying to get training done. But when you're in that situation, I think you start to kind of get a little paranoid and you're like, those safety briefs I sat through as a flight school student, they were all trying to get training done and the weather was kind of questionable. So though that kind of feeling in your gut just kind of sets in and you're kind of like, is this a good idea? But anyways, it was completely fine. But I'm just kind of going through what was kind of playing in my head. We ended up getting through the day portion of the multi-ship and everything was completely fine. And I did my nighttime portion of my multi-ship later that day. But I say that story to say once you get out of flight school, we're going to be put in situations where we kind of have to push our comfort level up a little bit. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, this is past my comfort level. I'm not okay with this. That's kind of our job as pilots. But at the same time, our job is to also be in situations that makes us think and makes us become better pilots. So that will do it for my RL2 progression video. My next video will likely be on just routine RL1 stuff. I got an NTC rotation coming up. I'll probably do some videos on that. But guys, thank you so much for the support and the subscribing, the liking, and the commenting. I love it. I couldn't do this without y'all, and I just want to say thank you so much for the support and keep it coming. My inbox is always open, and if you want my email, just leave a comment. I will gladly give you my email to direct message me and reach me at any time. I do this for you guys. Anyways, best of luck with everything, and have a safe flight.